Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for attending the APASU 2024, the Center of Hepatology. Now, we'd like to start our conference program.
Okay, so can I get started? This is the afternoon session for the APASU meeting on second day. And this session topic is DAA treatment for chronic hepatitis carriers, chronic hepatitis C in Asian Pacific region. And actually, DAA treatment for HCV carriers transformed very much. And the DAA treatment improved a QOL of HCV carriers treated patients. But for the first time, at the first, it was very expensive. But after the introduction of generic DAA has been put very much benefit all the countries. So today we will hear from the four speakers from several countries in Asian Pacific, including Japan, Philippines, and Pakistan. So our first speaker is Dr. Tetsuya Hosaka from the Toranomon Hospital, Japan. So please start. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, for kind introduction. I'm Tetsuya Hosaka from Toranomon Hospital in Tokyo, Japan. It is a pleasure to give me this opportunity to present here. Today, I will present a DAA treatment for CHC in Japan, including the issues in post-SVR. This is my disclosure. This is the agenda of my today's talk. First, we will talk about DAA treatment for CHC in Japan, including the effectiveness of glecapibrentacil and sofosbuvir in our real-world data, and the characteristics which are difficult to treat with GP or sofosbuvir. And second, I will talk about the remaining issues in post-SVR era. One of the most important issues is HCC incident after SVR. Then I will present the impact of metabolic factors on the HCC incident after SVR. And first of all, I'd like to discuss the evolution of anti-HCV treatment in Japan over the last 30 years. Until the early 2010s, anti-HCV treatment was interferon-based regimens. But numerous regimens has been developed, beginning with the first interferon-free regimen, the clartasvir-aznavprevir, since 2014. About 10 years has passed since then, and GP or sofosbuvir therapy is now the mainstay of treatment in Japan. The current standard of care in Japan is as following. And those are 8 or 12 weeks of GP or 12 weeks of sofosbuvir for treatment-naive patient with genotype 1 or 2. For genotype 3, GP or sofosbuvir for 12 weeks are available. For prior DAA failure, retreatment regimen are GP 12 weeks or sofosbuvir plus ribavirin for 24 weeks. Regarding to special populations, only GP is available for severe impaired renal function or dialysis. And only sofosbuvir 12 weeks is available for decompensated cirrhosis. But a sofosbuvir box cannot be used in Japan because the clinical trial were conducted in Japan. We will now show you our real-world data of GP or sofosbuvir. This figure shows the SVR rate of GP for treated-naive patients. As you can see, the SBR rate almost 100% for genotype 1, 2, or 3A. On the other hand, genotype 3B shows a lower SBR rate than other genotypes, at around 70%. The next we show is the result of retreatment of GP for prior DAA failure. SBR rate in genotype 1A, 2, or 3A were 100%, but 3 treatment failure with genotype 1B were observed. Therefore, we analyze the resistant associated substitution and RAS in the NS5A region of genotype 1B. This figure shows the SBR rate of GP therapy by RAS in the NS5A region in genotype 1B patient on treatment. SBR rate decreased significantly in patients with P32 deletion or A92 RAS. The reason for the low SBR rate in patients with Y93 wild is that all of these patients with P32 deletion or A92 RAS had Y93 wild. The association between the number of RAS in NS5 region and the SBR rate was also examined. As you can see, the SBR rate decreased in cases with 5 RAS loci. 2 cases with 5 loci had A92K RAS. Although A92 is not a strongly resistant RAS, it is presumed that the presence of this, in addition to several other RAS locations, may have decreased the therapeutic effect of GP. These 3 GP failure cases achieved SBR with the next software regimen as shown later. And next, we present the result of software in our institution. Due to the limited number of non-cirrhotic naive cases, now we present the result of DAA failure retreatment and decompensated cirrhosis shown here. On the left side is the result of software plus ribavirin for 24 weeks retreatment with SBR rate of 94%. The only unsuccessful cases was genotype 3B. We will discuss the clinical cost of this case on the next slide. The software 12 weeks SBR rate for patients with decompensated cirrhosis was 80%, which was comparable to the result of Japanese clinical trial. On the unsuccessful cases by software 12 weeks, in this case, a patient with genotype 3B compensated cirrhosis was treated with GP for 12 weeks as initial therapy, which is unsuccessful. Biological breakthrough occurred 1 month after starting with GP, and software plus ribavirin for 12 weeks were used as retreatment. As you can see, the HCV negativity was achieved at 8 weeks after starting with software. But biological relapse has occurred 4 weeks after end of treatment. Then we conducted a PCR direct sequencing of RAS of NS5 region in these cases. As shown in the lower figure, a wild sequences of genotype 3b, number 30 is K, and number 31 is M by GP. Y93 was wild. However, Y93H emerged after GP biological breakthrough. Here is a study of in vitro sensitivity analysis to NS5A inhibitors using genotype 3b leprechaun. Compared to the wild type genotype 3A, the genotype wild type of 3b has changed to K for number 30 and M for number 31. And both pibrentasvir and belpatasvir had higher EC50 values. And when Y93H is added to this, the EC50 is very high for all drugs, indicating very strong resistance mutations. In Japan, genotype 1 or 2 were majority, and genotype 3 is found in only few cases. But in Southeast Asia, South Asia, and Middle East, genotype 3 is more common. We present the result of GP phase 3 trial, which conducted in Asian country other than Japan. As you can see, the genotype 1, 2, and 6 had good result. But genotype 3b had lower SBR rate, 90%, than the other genotypes. This is a similar software trial in Asia. As with ZP, genotype 3b has a lower SBR rate than the other genotypes. Thus, genotype 3b is considered to be a refractory population regardless of regimen. Here's a summary of first part. It seems possible to achieve close to 100% by using GP and software therapy. However, genotype 3b may be DAA treatment refractory, although there are only few cases in Japan. And let's move on to the risk factor of HCC incident after SVR. This slide shows the percentage of HCC by background liver disease in Japan over 25-year period. As shown above, HCV-related HCC has been decreased recently, and the ratio of non-viral HCC has been increasing. The following table shows a trend of initial HCV-related HCC in our institution by time period. The left figure shows the number of HCC occurrence. The right figure shows the ratio of those without SVR. As is trend in Japan, therefore, the number of HCV-related HCC has been declined in recent years. On the other hand, the majority of recent HCC cases has post-SVR. In fact, in our past study, the cumulative HCC incidence rate has lower in patients who achieve SVR with DAA compared to those untreated patients. However, it is a fact that some patients developed HCC even after achieving SVR. As you all know, the recent issue is HCC incident not only from viral hepatitis, but also from fatty liver disease. we next examined the influence of metabolic factors on HCC incidence in our SVR cohort. We evaluate the influence of metabolic factors on HCC in our SVR cohort of 5,200 patients, including interferon SVR and DAA SVR. As you can see, the cumulative HCC incidence after SVR is significantly higher with diabetes, high BMI, and alcohol intake. A patient often has multiple metabolic factors, including diabetes, alcohol, and high BMI. Therefore, we focus on the BMI and evaluated HCC incidence rate based on BMI with or without diabetes and alcohol. As shown on the left, there was no difference HCC incidence between high or low BMI cases with diabetes or alcohol intake. On the other hand, as shown on the left, the HCC incidence rate was significantly higher in patients with high BMI than those without diabetes or alcohol intake. As you know, it is well known that the greatest risk factor for HCC after SVR is advanced fibrosis. In particular, FIB4 is well known as a surrogate marker for non-invasive marker of liver fibrosis. We evaluated HCC incidence based on BMI stratified FIB4, and HCC incidence rate was higher in patients with high BMI regardless FIB4 index levels. Therefore, we use FIB4, diabetes, alcohol intake, and BMI at the time of SVR to classify our SVR cohort into 4 risk categories. As you can see, advanced fibrosis group was defined as SVR24 FIB4 more than 2.67, diabetes or alcohol group as FIB4 less than 2.67, and alcohol or diabetes. High BMI group as FIB4 less than 2.67, and non-alcohol, non-diabetes, and BMI more than 23. Non-risk factor group as FIB4 less than 2.67, and non-alcohol, non-diabetes, and BMI less than 23. We compared the cumulative HCC incidence rate for each of these 4 categories. As you can see, the cumulative HCC incidence is higher in advanced fibrosis group, diabetes or alcohol group, high BMI group, and no risk factor groups. Finally, the no risk factor groups was stratified with the FIB4 less than 1.3 or 1.3 to 2.66, and compared to the HCC incidence. No patient with non-alcohol, non-diabetes, BMI less than 23, and FIB4 less than 1.3 developed HCC. In summary of HCC after SVR, not only liver fibrosis, but also diabetes, alcohol intake, and high BMI were found to be a risk factor for HCC after SVR. In the post-SVR era, it will be important to construct follow-up strategies based on these risk factors. In conclusion of my talk, Although the current GP and software regimen have made it possible to achieve SVR nearly 100% of patients, the remaining issue in Japan is how to treat the small number of patients who do not achieve SVR even with both regimens. And the approach to improve metabolic factors may be necessary to preventing HCC after SVR. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hosaka. You mentioned about improved DA treatment regimens, GP and software, and also small numbers of the patients are not achieving ASVR, and especially genotype 3 and genotype 3P, and also the factors for the remaining HCC risk for the metabolic DM, alcohol, and BMI. Thank you very much. So is there any discussions or questions from the audience? Yes, please.
Thank you very much for a nice presentation. Your non-responders, you treated with Sofwell plus ribavirin. Do you have any data for 24 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Do you have any data for just Sofwell for 24 weeks in this group of patients? I mean, is it necessary to give them ribavirin, or can they just be cured with 24 weeks of Sof and Well?
Yeah, and retreatment for of Softwell and our patient was treated with Softwell plus ribavirin for 12 weeks. All patients with 12 weeks.
But have you ソフベルだけで24週間っていうことをやったことありますか？
No, I have no data.
Okay, thank you very much.
All patients with ribavirin.
You have the genotype 3B patient treated very low SVR rate, but is there any, do you have the nationality or ethnicity of the 3B patient? Is Japanese or foreigner patient?
Yeah, and interestingly, she's Japanese.
Okay.
And she have no experience to go abroad.
Yeah, so actually, it is.
I have no idea.
Yeah, it is important to know that from the public health view of the genotype 3B is also coming to Japan, and it is a very important point. Yeah, thank you very much. Is there any other questions? Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Hosaka. So let's move on to the second speaker on this session, Dr. Saeed Hamid from Aga Khan University, Pakistan. He will talk about the use of generic DAAs in Asian Pacific, the key to successful HCV elimination. Please, Dr. Hamid.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the kind invitation to speak. I will focus on the use of generic DAAs in Asia Pacific, which we think are the key to successful elimination in this region. So these are the 20 most heavily burdened countries with viral hepatitis that we know about. These are not actual percentages or numbers, but these are just a graphical representation of where the most disease is. The green areas are by no means small in numbers, but the burden of disease is here. And you can see that the burden of disease is in Asia Pacific. And as we know, Asia Pacific is very heterogeneous. It consists of some rich countries, some middle-income countries, and a number of lower middle-income countries. So that is an issue. Now, I will not be Pakistan specific too much, but I will just like to tell you that currently Pakistan has the highest infection rate in the world for hepatitis C. Unfortunate statistic, but it is important because we are a large country, nearly 230 million people, and if you extrapolate the percentage which we now have of something like 7%, it becomes a very large number. In any case, as you can see on the map on the left-hand side, again it shows that even in terms of numbers, the EMRO and the Eastern Mediterranean, the Eastern Southeast Asian region and Wipro region are the ones which are really very heavily infested. So when we talk about the 2030 elimination, and we specifically focus on countries that are on track, this is a slightly old slide. Maybe there are more countries now, but some time ago, there were only 12 countries which were on track to eliminate hepatitis C by 2030. And that includes Japan, Australia, and Taiwan from the Asia-Pacific region. No low middle income countries or low income countries in Asia Pacific will be able to do this. In fact, if you look at the pie chart, 62% of countries will be able to eliminate only by 2050 or even longer, given at the stage that we were at some time ago. This is data from Homi Razavi, which just compares the annual cure rate. If you look at the right-hand side of the slide, percentage of total viremic patients, of which there was an annual cure rate. So North America is about 7%, and as you come down, Asia Pacific is only 0.21%. So quite a large deficit. Now, when the DAAs came in, there was initially, of course, the Western markets, and then quite quickly, and credit to the companies manufacturing these, they were into the business of granting voluntary licenses, which meant that the countries would be able to develop and manufacture under license these DAAs in their own countries, and that would therefore become easily available. However, this is a map from 2016-17, well after the agreements were signed, the voluntary agreements were signed, and as you can see in red, there was no voluntary licensing so far. In yellow or brown, there were voluntary licensing, but no registrations. And in yellow is voluntary licensing, where there were a few countries where initially the Sabosovir registration was filed. And in the green, which is some countries there was voluntary licensing and Sabosovir was registered. And that's about, these countries constitute about 42% of the global epidemic. So these licenses were mainly granted to Indian companies, as we know, both for Gilead and BMS, even for the medicines patent pool. These were granted mainly to the Indian companies, with the responsibility that they will be supplying these licensed generics to about 101 to 112 countries, given for Gilead and BMS. But really what happened on the ground was very, very slow movement. So generic Sabosovir was only registered in 23 countries. And as you go down the list, generic Declatosphere was only registered in 9 countries out of these potentially 111 or 112 countries that there was voluntary licensing available. So this is just the timeline. So generic licenses signed in September 2014, Harvoni approval, Declinza 2015, licensing through the MPP 2014, but nothing much happened. But then 2016 was a big year for HCV generics, and particularly for Asia Pacific, because the production of high quality generic DAAs commenced at scale. And these were factories that were established or manufacturing facilities established, for example, in Algeria, Bangladesh, Egypt, India, Morocco, and Pakistan. Most of these were pre-qualified for HIV drugs, generics, and therefore establishing a generic manufacturing for HCV was not a big problem. And as was expected, the generic DAAs overtook branded medication as a dominant source of worldwide cure. For example, in Egypt alone, and this was the early days of their elimination, more than 1 million people had been treated with these drugs even in the early years of their development. So these are some of the generics that appeared on the market and could be purchased or used anywhere within Asia Pacific, even globally. Some other generics, so I don't want to go into the details, but these were from India and Bangladesh mainly. At that time, there was a very reasonable access to generics that started. For example, the only crosses that you see are for Olysio, basically, which was not really important for us, and in some cases for lidisvavir, sabosvir combinations. But generally, sabosvir and declatisvir started to become available. This is data from the Sierra region. This is data from the Wipro region. You can see sabosvir availability for mainly at that time for branded products, but in some cases for non-branded products as well. For example, Cambodia and Vietnam. This is what happened in Pakistan. So the solid line, the solid red line indicates the originator brand, Sovaldi, which came to us in January 2016. And as the generics came up, they dramatically overtook all the sales for the generics, and the sales for the originator went down significantly until they almost completely disappeared from the market by 2017. Similar or along this path, there were significant price reductions in the Indian generic HCV medicines for private purchase. So this is private purchase, and if you look at each of these, the blue line is sofosbuvir. They started at $330, and this is a month's worth of treatment. So $330 per month, still very expensive for many countries within Asia Pacific. But then, as time moved on, they dropped down to $23 per month of treatment. And similar things happened to declatisvir, to sabosvir, lidisvavir, etc., and then finally to velpatasvir. So the prices came down significantly. And if these were government purchases for the government programs, the price reductions were even more dramatic. So sabosvir went down from 94 to 61 per month. Declatisvir went from 33 to 12, and sabosvir, lidisvavir to 60, from 60 to 24. So needless to say, SOF and declatisvir became the predominant pan-genotypic drugs for DAAs for the treatment of hepatitis C in Asia Pacific region. Some people or some societies did not recognize SOF and DEC as a genuine pan-genotypic drug. That was a problem. But when we started to do the WHO guidelines, we managed to insert the SOF-DEC into the WHO guidelines. So it became a little bit lawful and kosher to use SOF-DEC as a pan-genotypic regimen. The story continues even down to 2015, 2019, if you say, further price reductions to the extent that generic declatisvir was available for as low as $5 per bottle for a month, and generic sabosvir was available for about $13. So in about $28 or $30, you could treat a patient in Asia Pacific in many countries for HCV. Now, this is some work from Andrew Hill, who many years ago, before this happened, predicted that this would be the final price. And how did he predict this? This is the cost of API per kilogram that was exported, for example, from India to other countries. So the cost per kilogram was a little over $1,000. The API for 12 weeks was costing, which means three bottles basically, was costing $37. If you put in formulations plus excipients and so on, it came to $40 per month. If you put in packaging, another $41, another dollar gets to $41. And if you put in a 50% profit margin, it goes up to 62 per month, which is actually where we are right now. You may have heard last year there was a hepatitis fund meeting in which two Indian companies pledged that they would provide generic soft and declatosphere for $60 a month for the treatment. So that is, we have reached there. Similar calculations for declatosphere, even cheaper. So the final generic price that Andrew Hill calculated was $14, and that is where I think we are today. What has happened to DA availability in Pakistan? We started with the originator at 300 per month. Very few people could afford it. This was March 2015. In February 16, we got the first Sabosavir generic, $20 a month, and then we got the combination in January 17. And this is what we have persisted with. And then we were lucky to have the soft-well combination as well for about $40 per month. And this is our now first-line treatment in many cases. But the government programs prefer the soft and DEC because it is still cheaper and they can treat more patients than with soft-well. So the current price is soft DAC $18 a month and soft-well $36 a month. I'm sorry, I'm sounding like an accountant, but this is extremely important because this is how a lot of patients have been treated in Asia Pacific with the generics. So by 2023, this is a recent paper in Lancet Gastro-Hep in which we participated. This is Jason Gribelli from Australia, who looked at the global registrations and availability and restrictions and so on of DAAs within globally and also within Asia Pacific. By mid-23, 145, which means 91% countries had registered at least one of the pan-genotypic therapies. And therefore, almost all countries in Asia Pacific now have generic drugs that are available to them at very low costs. However, not all countries are reimbursing these therapies, which is something that one needs to consider. Only 68% of countries reimburse at least one DAA therapy. And this includes LMICs. 87% of LMICs had registered at least one HCV DAA therapy, but only 52% are reimbursing at least one DAA therapy. And this is the latest data from 23, which is in this paper. Moreover, we'll touch on this a little bit more briefly, that there is some restrictions to these treatments in some countries, which I think need to be looked at. The global access to DAA reimbursement remains uneven, with LMICs having comparatively low reimbursement rates. So there are the first important restriction is prescriber type restrictions. So who can prescribe? Is it still the specialist sitting in a specialized clinic in a major hospital, or can people sitting in the primary care clinics out in the community, can they prescribe? Or can even pharmacists prescribe? Or can even nurses prescribe? So as you can see, the map is, a lot of map is red, which means that there are prescriber type restrictions. So much of Asia Pacific still has prescribing restrictions, except maybe for a few countries and a few countries where we don't have good data. So that is something that needs to be looked at very carefully. So these are the restrictions. 61% of the countries required specialized prescribing. 7% there were retreatment restrictions. They would not retreat. And I'm talking about government programs now, not the private sector, the private clinics, but 7% would not offer retreatment to these patients. 6% do not offer PIVIDs any treatment, even as we speak today. And there are restrictions on alcohol. 5% had an alcohol use restriction. And lo and behold, 3% of the countries still had liver disease restrictions. So they will reimburse beyond significant fibrosis, but not reimburse anybody. So it is not a treat-all situation. So Just a quick visual graphic to look at the status of DAA registration in the Asia-Pacific region. As I've mentioned, almost all countries have something or the other. So the light bars, the light boxes are reimbursed, and the ticks are registered. So you can see there's a lot of software which is registered in almost every country except perhaps Myanmar, but the reimbursements can be variable. Similarly, in South Asia, there are significant amounts of drugs that are registered and reimbursed. Of course, soft valve WOX is hardly registered anywhere except maybe here in Taiwan, and GP is very few registrations, perhaps in Japan and so on. So now the main question is, are these generics effective? Do they work? And this is something that we did with Senji Lim from Singapore. Cumulative data of people treated, more than 2,000 people treated with generic DAAs, all of these, India, Myanmar, Pakistan, Thailand, Singapore, and Malaysia. And you can see that the results are really quite satisfactory. Even for genotype 3, we were surprised that the result was very good. But these were, of course, not decompensated patients. They may have been, of course, there would be some cirrhotic patients here, but early disease with no restrictions, these are very good data that we were very satisfied with. And this is primarily, in most cases, this is SOF and DEC. In some cases, this is SOF and well. So we're not sort of, but this is, again, data strictly from Singapore, genotype 3, difficult to treat patients, single center observational retrospective study of SOF-WEL plus ribavirin and again generic in genotype 3 patients. Very little virological failure, non-response, non-virological reasons 1%, non-adherence. That means there were no treatment-related adverse events and so on. So these drugs do seem to work. I don't think we have any issues in saying that the generic DAAs manufactured from reasonably well-established good companies do work, and they are very, very cheap to administer. So big national programs have been using this now for quite some time. There's the example of the Indian Punjab, which is initiated in 2016. They are up now, I think, up to more than 2 or maybe at least 2 million people use of oral DAA, all fibrosis stages, all genotypes. If they're non-cirrhotics, they get 12 weeks. If they're cirrhotics, they get soft DEC for 24 weeks. As of April 2017, 25,000 had been treated, and the latest figures are, as I said, touching 1 million with the same results. Our HCV program is about to kick off, should have kicked off in 2023, but it will hopefully kick off now. Our main objectives for the phase 1, 5 years, is to screen 50% of the population, of the adult population, which will mean 69 million people. So that is about total, when we screen about 120 million people, that will be 2.5 times Egypt that we need to do. So it is a great tall order. We will test all screened positive population, of course, with PCRs, and then we are going to need treatment for about over 4 million people. So far, we have not done too badly. This is data from both the private and the public sector. This is not the data from the big national program that is coming through yet. But we have screened about 30% or in fact diagnosed 30% of our potential population of HCV, and we've treated 16% of the potential population that needs to be treated. So we had a reasonable start, but let's see what is then the next step. So what needs to happen? We need to still find the missing millions and link them to care. We need to register more drugs. We desperately need drugs which may be 8 weeks of therapy that will improve adherence, that will improve results. GP has AbbVie has shown no inclination at all to do what Gilead has done, but let's see what happens in the future. Interestingly, there are newer combinations that are being developed with DAAs. We are testing one of them right now from a small US company, which is 8 weeks of treatment. And we are very hopeful that if this works, this might be something that will be acceptable in terms of prices. So Egypt and India are major examples of price reductions, and they expanded the pool of treating providers, and we need to, of course, improve the skills of non-specialist care professionals to manage liver disease and implement. So just a conclusion, treatment with generics work. They are available. They have worked for the HIV market for a long, long time, and the prices have sort of mirrored what happened in the HIV arena. With the availability of generics within the Asia-Pacific region, I think many more countries can look at elimination by 2030. The development of a cure for hepatitis C was a breathtaking achievement, of course, but then the generic availability, I think, has been also a major step in this field. So let's work together and make the eradication of hepatitis C our next great challenge. My last slide, I would like to invite you on Saturday, the 30th of March, where we are launching the WHO HCV, the new WHO HCV guidelines, and it is a real pleasure for us to do this in Asia Pacific. We insisted that we should do this in Asia Pacific because this is still a big burden area for hepatitis B. So hope to see you all there. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Hamid. Your nice presentation about the situation of Pakistan. The DAA is very strong tool for the treat HCV carriers, but still there are several barriers to achieve the WHO goal. So is there any questions from the audience? So what is the most important target to improve the access of the treatment for the HCV carriers in Pakistan?
So what we've stressed on, and we've been part of the WHO guidelines for hepatitis C as well, and that has been the simplification, the extreme simplification, 2 steps, 3 steps, and that is what is needed. And also the decentralization and task shifting of these drugs. So there's no way that we can treat these patients. The number of patients that we have to treat, we cannot treat them in large hospitals. They will not come, and we will not be able to treat them. We have to treat them in the periphery, and we have to train our healthcare staff to do this in the periphery.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
There is no more questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, so let's move on to the next speaker from the Dr. Jose Solano. He's from the University of Santo Tomas from Manila, Philippines. Yeah. So please start. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I have a presentation that will probably echo some of the things that already that Said has said. Basically because in the Philippines, hepatitis C is a very, very minor disease, and we haven't seen a hepatitis C patient maybe during the pandemic and until now. But I think hepatitis C has become a disease that is a target for elimination because of the availability of DAAs. Nowadays it is generic and it's cheap. There are very, very good tests that you can pick up patients, except that they are still have to be found. And hopefully that the ambitious objective with the WHO by 2030 can be closer to being achieved. And many of the speakers have already emphasized the impact and the burden of hepatitis C in the Asia Pacific, in all these 4 countries that have been identified here. Most of them are in Asia. Many millions are still have to be found and need to be treated, and still many people die from that. And I think this symposium talking about genotype 1, which is the most dominant genotype in most of the countries that have been mentioned in the Asia Pacific. So this is a map of the HCV genotypes in the world, and you can see that in the Eastern Asia and of course South Asia, You can more or less see there that genotype 1 is common, except, of course, around the Middle East, where many other varieties of genotypes are found. In Southeast Asia, basically, most of the genotypes are genotype 1, except that I think Sengi has found some of his genotype 3 that he studied in Singapore, maybe coming from the areas and regions in the Asia Pacific that come to Singapore. Genotype 1 is quite a common disease, and it gives us a very, very bad clinical course, especially genotype subtype 1b. Here, for example, is the comparison of the disease presentation between 1A, 1B, and 2A. And you see that 1B seems to be more related to more severe hepatitis, leading to earlier cirrhosis and even hepatocellular carcinoma. Data, however, coming from Korea, which basically looked at subtype 1B in about 823 patients, noted, however, that this perception, at least in Korea, is not as bad as it seems. In this cohort, about 800 patients, genotype 1B seems to be more prevalent in liver cirrhosis, but not in liver cancer. Being said, however, is that when these patients grow older and they have more fibrosis before they get treated, most of these patients will still have a high risk of developing liver disease, especially liver cancer. And in this cohort, age, male sex, and of course the degree of liver damage were the drivers of the development of liver cirrhosis and liver cancer, but not subtype 1B. We have seen this slide already, and I think today we have GP as part of the mainstay recommendations. However, we have to see in the horizon whether they're going to be more kind to the world by giving us the license to do generics. But clearly, almost all these drugs are available in the Asia Pacific. Some of them have been tried in China, and I think all of us here are aware that most of these preparations that we have enumerated in this slide is available. We are glad that the Clostevir was also, with Said's effort, had been part of the guidelines, at least for hepatitis C in Asia Pacific. Hepatitis C is a really great chance for demonstrating that in the modern world we can still impact heavily on the health of our population. Here, for example, are two data sets coming from Asia and one from Europe, which shows that if you eliminate the virus, the incidence of liver cancer is much, much lower. And of course, even the incidence of HCC recurrence. We have heard from the first speaker, however, that there are metabolic factors that might drive liver cancer in patients who have had an SVR. It is also important that when we treat patients with hepatitis C and cure them, it has both a clinical advantage, basically because of the outcomes of treatment that we have seen. It has a lot of economic advantages and clearly societal and even individual patient value. Here are graphs of predicted reduction in hepatitis C-related productivity loss in countries like China, Singapore, and Korea, showing that the quality of life of these patients are improved, their absenteeism disappears or diminished, and clearly not only their individual and their families are benefited, but clearly the entire society. This is data from China in this very recent analysis. Here, for example, in this particular paper shows that medical costs and therefore the economic advantage that is being seen in patients who have a good response is significantly diminished because of less hospitalizations, less clinic visits, and clearly less complications of chronic liver disease and, of course, repeated treatments for liver cancer and complicated decompensated cirrhosis. These are some of the treatments that had been enumerated earlier. I picked this up from the Korean Association for the Study of the Liver, and all these drugs that are available in this enumeration here are basically available in Asia Pacific. The next several slides is just a run through of some of the guidelines which we basically base our our treatment practices. I think Syed has emphasized the simplification of treatment that has been basically the mantra of the WHO. And all of these countries that have been successfully implementing eradication, elimination strategies have really relied on simplification of HCV treatment. We are also very smart, I think, in the APASL, in the very first go of the consensus that we had during the transition between PEG interferon and ribavirin therapies to DAAs. We said that in countries where the DAAs are available, then that will be the major step in the treatment. Of course, in areas where there are no accessible DAAs in 2016, we can still rely on PEG interferon and ribavirin. But nowadays, I think all of us have forgotten about PEG-RIVA, except that in some patients will still need ribavirin. The guidance on genotype 1A is very much reputed, and I hope that, yes, a GP will be available in a cheaper price because they offer an advantage of a shorter duration of treatment in patients who are naive for 1A and, of course, treatment naive for 1B, especially if they're not cirrhotic. It is also important that in areas or countries where we are really in that elimination strategy to categorize some of these patients who might also need shorter therapies because of a low viral load. I just quoted this particular paper from Europe on GP and see in the cohort, and I think we saw that in the Japanese data a while ago, that indeed the eradication rates that are achieved by GP is very remarkable. Of course, it is important that even soft-gel and soft-lead has been very effective in the Asia-Pacific area. This is a very good data set that needs to be the basis of more aggressive treatments of the new drugs being administered to our patients in the area. Clearly, there are patients who are not available for the simplified treatment, and just want to repeat that this cohort here or group of patients are not there, but I think some work is being done on seeing whether some of these patients with cirrhosis can be also given these simplified HCV therapies. The advent of or the inclusion of FibroScan in our locality has very much simplified the simplification of the HCV treatments. First, maybe demonstrated in Australia, but now being duplicated in many other areas in the mainland Asian continent. For compensated cirrhosis, I think the guidelines are very clear. Here, soft-gel, GP, soft-lead, and of course, elbasvir and crisaborvir are also recommended in this cohort of patients. Again, the shorter the duration of treatment, maybe the better the compliance, and therefore the higher the cure rates of our populations that we're seeing, especially in the patients with genotype 1A compensated cirrhosis, and this is also the same recommendation for compensated genotype 1B cohort. Very interesting to see how GP is being done or is achieving a lot of good outcomes. This is a European data, but more and more there are Asian data that's coming out and has been earlier quoted, showing to us that virologic cure is more than 95% in all subgroups. And you can see that the drug combination is quite safe. And the cure rates are very impressive, both in patients with liver cirrhosis, both in patients who are treatment experienced, and of course, even in shorter or versus longer duration of therapies. GP seems to be a very, very promising combination. This is, however, not to discredit the fact that soft-gel is also very impressive. It's also giving us very impressive eradication rates in the Asia-Pacific studies. Again, just to reiterate, which patients are not available for the simplified HCV treatment in the compensated cirrhotic patients. For the decompensated cirrhotic patients, a little bit more caution on these patients because Clearly, there are some issues. They're also treated for a longer time, and clearly some of these complications and side effects must be monitored very closely. And I hope that ribavirin is still available. I don't know whether ribavirin is still available in the Philippines, but clearly there are still generic companies that are doing this particular manufacturing, and therefore for ribavirin eligible and for ribavirin ineligible, we have quite very good guidelines to guide our clinicians. In the Philippines, for example, still the prescribers are the hepatologists and the gastroenterologists, and for hepatitis C, which is not seen very commonly by the GPs, most of these patients are referred to specialty clinics. For type 1A, for example, I think the most important issue is treatment failure. We have some recommendations on which one to use. There are very good old drugs that are still being prescribed and recommended, and it is very, very comforting that these are all available in Southeast Asia. One last issue about genotype 1, I think, is the fact that we have more RAS events compared to the other subgenotypes or subtypes, and maybe this is an issue. We are glad that in the Philippines we have not many patients that we see, and therefore these issues about resistance are not really very much in our offices. These are the recommendations for testing, and for genotype 1, I think this is just justified because of the higher incidence of RAS being observed in this particular genotype. And the IDSA and ASLD and all the other guidelines, I think, are all in one in trying to make all these recommendations of the combination of treatments of patients who have developed RAS, 1A and 1B, and of course all the other types of clinical disease that genotypes 1A and 1B are involved. In areas where genotype 3, which is a little bit more difficult to treat, you can see that Softwell and GP are recommended, and very comforting again that Softwell is very, very cheap in this region. I think the WHO has very much in the lead in trying to do this elimination strategy for hepatitis C, and I don't want to bore you with all these strategic directions that have been coined again to address this issue until 2030. We are encouraged by the many innovations that some countries and many other jurisdictions are able to implement, and hopefully that they will be able to succeed in the medium term. I think the key strategies are still the same. We are here for more screening and more widespread coverage for the diagnosis of the patients who are infected. Hopefully that they are giving the correct treatment by the proper physicians in a good duration of time with the proper drugs. And this only doesn't have to be the effort only of the physicians. Clearly, many countries have, used and involved civil society, the healthcare providers, international partners. But I think what most important is government programs. These are some of the countries which I think had been identified as the models for a successful eradication program for hepatitis C. And you see that in this enumeration of 5 countries, 4 of these are from Asia. Of course, Egypt was the model for a very aggressive treatment eradication program that we have seen in the globe. It was led by the president himself, leading the campaign against hepatitis C. But I think the model of Australia, where they empowered the GPs in the outbacks to just get expert recommendations through the phone or by telemedicine, and gave them the power to prescribe drugs in the outbacks, and that's how to bring in the patients who are not complicated into the hospitals, have been very, very good processes that can be duplicated in some other localities. We have heard Saeed here talk about the Pakistani model. I'm very impressed, but that they are now progressing into finding those missing millions. Of course, India has been in the forefront of generics, and some of the provinces like Punjab has been outstanding in their programs. But I think a very, very small country, Vietnam, is also succeeding very well. And so all of us who are in the Southeast Asian region, especially those who are in archipelago geographies, will have to learn from the models that these countries have shown us. The problem with archipelago or like Philippines and Indonesia, where access is difficult for some patients to see physicians, will be challenging. This is not seen in these countries. For example, Egypt, Australia, Pakistan, India is one big island, and therefore it's easy to transport drugs, transport personnel in areas where an archipelagic geography is the condition of that particular country. Then all these efforts can be a little bit stymied. So can we eradicate HCV in 2030? Maybe we're getting there, but there are clearly challenges. And these challenges, I think my other speakers have already given you. In summary, therefore, Mr. Chairman, the studies from Asia show remarkable eradication rates achieved by all DAAs for hepatitis C genotype 1. Variations in prevalence rates vary because of healthcare systems and, of course, the prevalence rates in every country. And this will impact on our elimination efforts. Successful regional initiatives are facilitating HCV elimination efforts in the Asia Pacific. Availability and affordability of generic DAAs, governments and NGOs cooperating with international organizations, the importance of political commitment in the resource allocation we have alluded to, and of course, need to copy all these models in our certain specific localities. There are still challenges that are there, but we need to just go on and doggedly pursue our objectives. It is important that we eradicate hepatitis C, not only for the clinical and the benefits, but clearly for the economic and the societal as well as the individual patient benefits that is associated with HCV eradication. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Solano, for your comprehensive presentation about the DAA therapy. So is there any questions or discussions? So I have one question about the situation in Philippines. How is the epidemiology situation of the HCV, and also how is the planning for the elimination target?
Yeah. I think the Philippines is lucky because there are only a very few pocket areas where HCV is quite prevalent, and these are areas where the urbanized areas where IV drug use was common. And basically we're all type 1, genotype 1A and 1B. Very few sprinklings of genotype 2. Before, sofosbuvir was the only drug, and of course interferon and ribavirin. But now Sofvel and Sofdoc is available in the country. We are still an out-of-pocket market, and very, very few have reimbursed treatments. But because of the small number of the population with Hep C, then I think we are succeeding. As I said, I have not seen a patient with Hep C during the pandemic, and of course until now. So really, I think hopefully we're succeeding. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Solano. I have a small question. Actually, you know, to cure of the hepatitis C is very important. And of course, we have very strong, very effective drugs. But the problem is, especially using the same shrinks for the addicted persons. How can you make, I mean, what is your opinion about, because in order to prevent this kind of using, then to cure is impossible.
If I understood your question well, I think the patients and the physicians treating the patient with hepatitis C should have a commitment to complete the drug regimen that they have agreed upon. There are guidelines to tell us whether they're going to choose a combination that is only going to last for 8 weeks or to 12 weeks. My personal experience is that most of the patients that I see are quite educated even the drug addict patients, because the profile of patients who are injecting drugs today are not really the poor ones. Even the professionals are injecting drugs when they were younger and they had hepatitis C. And maybe the completion of the duration of the treatment is important in all these patients, and to catch them at an early stage so that they are not in the decompensated state that they become difficult to treat.
Thank you very much. Now, the last speaker of this session, Dr. Taro Yamashita from Kanazawa University. He's going to speak about management of hepatitis C virus infection in Japan. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. I'd like to thank the organizer for giving me a chance to present a broad title. The title of my presentation is Management of Hepatitis C virus infection in Japan. That is very, very broad for me, but let me try my best. Okay, and this is my COI, and the study was associated with the grant from the API, Abbott, and Gilead Sciences to some part of my presentation. So hepatitis B virus was discovered by Dr. Bromberg in 1964. Hepatitis C virus was discovered by Michael Houghton in around 1988 and 1989. And then the blood transmitted hepatitis was totally decreased. That resulted in the reduction of HCV development currently we are seeing in Japan. But as globally speaking, unfortunately, the death related to the chronic hepatitis B or hepatitis C infection seems to increase in the next several decades compared with tuberculosis, hepatitis, HIV infection, or malaria, most likely due to the high frequency of this disease in Asia and Africa. And indeed, hepatocellular carcinoma is still the third leading cause of cancer deaths in the world. And about 800,000 patients annually died in the world. And this high prevalence area is closely related to the high prevalence region of hepatitis B virus and hepatitis C virus. Unfortunately, I believe that in these areas, the individual infected with hepatitis B virus, C virus cannot reach to the, for example, hepatitis virus testing or treatment, etc. So this is this slide shows the HCV structure, HCV genome. I believe that Professor Dr. Wakita played a central role on the discovery of this kind of virus life cycle. And now we are targeting the, for example, NS3 helicase serine protease, or NS5A or NS5B RNA-dependent RNA polymerases by direct-acting antivirals. Sofosbuvir targets NS5B, glecaprevir, NS3, and pibrentasvir, berpatasvir target NS5A. And all these drugs are available in Japan for the treatment of Hep C in pangenotypic manner. And this slide shows the SVR rates of the patient in our university hospital and 32 affiliated hospitals by the first generation DAAs such as daglatasvir, asnaprevir, and SVR rate that total is about 88%. But unfortunately, in that times, if the patient had NS5A mutation virus, then unfortunately the SVR rates range about 60 to 70%. However, now, as a third generation DAAs such as glecaprevir, pibrentasvir, or berpatasvir, sofosbuvir available, and SVR rates now are more than 95%. So Japan is considered as one of the top 20 countries most heavily burdened with viral hepatitis, such as Hep C and Hep B, according to the Coalition of the Hepatitis Elimination Program founded in 2019. And About the prevalence of HBs antigenemia, about 949,000 patients were positive for HBs antigen, less than 1% of population, and estimated that about 62% of population with HBV was diagnosed. And HBV-related deaths per year is about 7,000. And disability-adjusted life years, DARIs, related to Hep B is estimated around 155, so it's huge. However, the number of Hep C viremia estimated in Japan is about 562,000, less than 1% of the population, and 87% of population with HCV seems to be diagnosed, to be estimated, according to the estimation. And HCV-related deaths per year is about 10,000. However, the important point is that the DARI related to Hep C is 622,000. That means almost fourfold higher than Hep B in Japan. The situation is quite different from the China because in China, Hep B plays a central role on the inhibition of the healthy life. And according to the government academic effort, now in Japan, more than 1 million individuals can access freely to the viral hepatitis test each year. And Hep B universal vaccination started in 2016. In 2015, individuals with Hep C/B viremia were estimated around 0.89 million to 1.3 million. However, in 2020, individuals with Hep C decreased, are estimated around 0.47 to 0.84 million. That means that half of the Hep C positive patients were treated by DAA during these 5 years. And hepatitis policy index consists of several factors such as government effort for the elimination of Hep C, Hep B, etc. Hepatitis policy index score now improved in Japan toward the elimination of Hep C. And from 2008 to 2018, the more than 1 million people, individuals, reached to the hepatitis virus test provided by the government, mostly local governments, and free of charge. And once diagnosed, then the medical expenses subsidy system available for the DA treatment in Japan. Only 10,000 or 20,000 yen per month co-payment is required to receive the treatment. And after the treatment, for a period for the surveillance of, for example, HCC, again, medical expenses subsidy system is available for HCC surveillance. Now it works very well. However, unfortunately, it depends on, for example, the areas where they are living. For example, Ishikawa Prefecture, here is our university hospital exists. And early this year, we experienced the huge earthquakes close to the Noto Peninsula. And geographically, these areas are so isolated from the urban areas. And important point is that in these rural areas, the information about Hep C or Hep B hepatitis tests or might be limited, and also the board-certified hepatologist that are required for the prescription of DAA is also limited. Actually, here through the General Hospital, no board-certified hepatologist exists. So we try to connect such rural area with university hospital using ICT and checking the medical records and checking the patient's status together with the local physicians. Now we can prescribe the DAA and treat them And this system seems to work for the treatment of patients living in rural areas. But this system also works well to see the patient's information at the disaster, such as earthquakes. We could reach the patient information using ICT. That would be very helpful. So connecting rural and urban areas by ICT would be very helpful for viral hepatitis elimination, and also would be helpful to live in Japan, where the disaster earthquakes that so frequently happen. So thanks to the government effort, now the mortality or number of deaths related to the liver hepatitis, such as liver cancer, dramatically decreased from 2000 to 2020. And in terms of Hep C eradication, according to the 22,000 USA data, HCC risk reduced approximately 1/4 by Hep C eradication. But the important point is that already previous speaker suggested that HCC risks remained and not become zero. And we are currently making an effort to develop a biomarker to stratify HCC risk. But important point is that in Japan, more than 500,000 Hep C SPR achieved patients exist. We need to perform surveillance of all these patients in an effective manner. So let me try to explain our effort about the development of novel biomarker termed laminin gamma 2 monomer. This is we term this as LG2M. Laminin is a basement membrane consists of 3 chains such as alpha, beta, and gamma chains. And generally, they support the survival of epithelial cell by lining as a very thin layer. But our collaborator, Professor Koshikawa, in 1999, almost more than 20 years ago, discovered that this laminin gamma 2 exists as a monomer in cancer tissues, but not in normal tissues. So they developed the ELISA system to identify the serum laminin gamma 2 monomer, but not heterotomer, by developing the specific antibody recognizing monomer. And they evaluated the concentration of laminin gamma 2 monomer in the serum of patients, various types of cancer. And first, they found it that compared with control or chronic liver disease patients, the serum laminin gamma 2 monomer levels were elevated in hepatocellular carcinoma patients. So we initiated the collaboration study from almost 10 years ago and evaluated the serum laminin gamma 2 monomer using the 142 HCC patient sera and about 130 chronic liver disease patient sera. About 65% of patients show the elevation of serum laminin gamma 2 monomer, LG2M, in HCC, equally in Hep B related, Hep C related, or non-B non-C. However, we found that Hep B related, Hep C related, or non-B non-C related, any type of chronic liver disease patient, about 30% of the patients showed the elevation of serum LG2M. So the question is why such kind of elevation can be observed in this patient. So we immunohistochemically evaluated the expressing cell of laminin 5, laminin gamma 2 chain. We found that the laminin gamma 2 expressing cells are so-called ductular reaction that are composed of stem progenitor cell population, mainly detected in liver cirrhosis tissues. And important point is that this reaction or the stem progenitor cells emergence is a strong histological risk factor for HCC development. So we conducted a multi-center prospective observation study for HCC risk, and we enrolled Hep C SBL patients without prior history of HCC. And at entry, imaging was performed that no HCC was observed. And 399 patients were enrolled, and one patient dropped out during the HCC surveillance period. And we can access 398 patients' information. And median observation period was 30 months. And the clinical pathological characteristics obtained at SBR was almost transaminases, platelet count, albumin, fibrosis score, almost all these markers are normal on average, and age was about 67 years old, female dominant. Alcohol was only observed in 5%, and BMI is normal. Diabetes was not so much high. And in this cohort, the LG2 HCC indigenous was 1.1% at 12 months, 1.7% at 24 months, and 4.6% at 36 months. And LG2M elevation seems to be related to the high incidence of HCC, and hazard ratio was 19.6, almost 20-fold increase. About 1/3 of patients showed elevation of LG2M. And compared with AFP, of course, AFP is also a marker for the HCC risk, but we found that the not AFP elevated patients also show the HCC development. And when we combine AFP and LG2M together, then we could not see any HCC development in both negative cohorts. So it could be useful for the stratification of HCC risk in this cohort. We performed the invariant analysis and the platelet count, fibrosis score, AFP, and LG2M is a risk factor for HCC, but multivariate analysis identified that alpha-fit protein and LG2M elevation is two independent risk factors for HCC risk. And SBR achievement reduces the risk of HCC, and consistently both alpha-fit protein and LG2M serum levels declined after SBR achievement. So these data suggested that the measurement of LG2M might be useful for the HCC risk prediction. And finally, I'd like to show some basic data why LG2M is useful for the evaluation or risk prediction of HCC. We developed the LG2M transgenic mouse specifically expressed in the liver by albumin promoter, and also we constructed this LMC2 gene contrast not forming heterotrimer, but only act as a monomer. And this is the result of transgenic mouse liver. And surprisingly, we found that just 10 weeks age of mouse liver shows a complete liver cirrhosis. And today I don't show the data, but in this transgenic mouse, it also developed HCC at a later phase. So these data suggested that LG2M is not just a marker. LG2M is a functional molecule to induce liver fibrosis and HCC. And we believe that's why measurement of LG2M is useful for prediction of HCC in future. So at least chronic hepatitis stage, we believe that evaluation of alpha-fit protein and LG2M seems to be effective for the prediction of HCC in future. And I don't show the data in detail, but it also can be used for the different diagnosis of different nature of HCC cells, like AFP positive or LG2M positive cell. This data may be available, could be available in published paper. Okay, so now towards the elimination of Hep C in Japan. Now we are all moving forward to eliminate Hep C by, for example, increase awareness of viral hepatitis by education, collaboration, or expand Hep C screening, improving strategy, and establish the highly effective process to identify high-risk population, etc. But we believe that one way is to establish the useful biomarker for HCC risk stratification, because now in Japan, more than 500,000 Hep C treated patients exist, and all these patients should be receive the surveillance for HCC for the early diagnosis and to improve the prognosis of HCC. Okay, so in summary, Japan is one of the top 20 countries heavily burdened with Hep C infection. Efforts to eliminate Hep C infection are ongoing, mostly by government, and the main obstacle is still identifying Hep C infected individuals and connecting them with treatment, and facilitating the promotion of testing and the reduction of barriers to referral and treatment are on the way to achieve WHO goals, hopefully by 2030 in Japan. And development of a biomarker to stratify high-risk Hep C SVR patients to develop HCC is ongoing. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Yamashita. It's really excellent speech. And is there any question or comment from audience? Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much for your very nice presentation. I have one question about your laminin G2 monomer marker. And you showed that the data of transgenic mouse. So the laminin G2 produced in the transgenic mouse hepatocyte because of the its drive under the albumin promoter. So is this a physiological reasonable because the laminin G2 is produced in the hepatocyte?
Yes. Yes, that's a very important point that we are now currently trying to address. And we are making the transgenic mouse expressing CK90 positive cell, not albumin positive cell, because physiologically CK90 positive cell express laminin. But unfortunately, thus far we still don't reach the data, but we are trying. And of course, albumin is ubiquitously expressed in hepatocyte, and that might affects the result because the only 10 weeks mouse liver shows liver cirrhosis, complete cirrhosis. That might be too fast. That's so.
Okay.
Yeah, but
thank you very much. Another question is you showed that you are using the ICT technology for during the disaster earthquake in Noto Peninsula, and I would like to about how is the impact on during the pandemic. Have you ever also used the ICT technology for the treatment and diagnosis for the hepatitis patients during the pandemic?
yeah, potentially I think it had an impact, but because that system we utilize one system is called ID Link to connect the electronic medical records together, and the other way is just Zoom, and Zoom is only, actively available during the pandemic era. So I think it's connected very together.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have one question. You demonstrated in your study that LG2M really predict, risk factor of the hepatocellular carcinoma, future risk. And do you have any comparative study related with the alpha-fetoprotein, DCP, and also alpha-fetoprotein L3?
I see. Yeah, that's also very important point need to be solved. And we have data about the DCP. DCP is not working at all. AFP-L3, unfortunately, we don't measure AFP-L3. We only have the AFP, LG2M, DCP together, and DCP is not working. That's what I can say now. But AFP is, of course, one good marker for predicting future HCC risk. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Is there another question or any comment from audience? In any case, then I would like to close this session. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the lectures.